No quirk, no spotlight, no publicity stunts, none of it. Even without the traditional hero framework, Knuckleduster is still one of the greatest heroes in MHA, and if you've never watched Vigilantes, you might never have even heard of him. Knuckleduster is a vigilante, meaning he doesn't follow the typical hero rules. He doesn't have a dispatcher telling him where to go, doesn't do any public relations, and he certainly doesn't wait for a villain to make the first move. While he might be more violent and break some laws in the process, because he's a vigilante, Knuckleduster is much better at fighting the crime that slips in between the cracks. He never claimed to be some massive hero like All Might saving the day from the big villains, but the backstreets and alleyways that are still filled with so much crime is where he shines. Today I'll be analyzing just what makes Knuckleduster such a great hero, and why he's so different than the traditional hero mold. But just a heads up, this video will contain manga spoilers, so if you're still reading it or are an anime only watcher, just come back to this video when you're ready. Alright, with that out of the way, let's dive in. To set the stage, we first have to understand who Knuckleduster even is. The man has many names, but his real name is Iwao Oguro. While Knuckleduster's whole thing is being a hero without a quirk, Oguro actually used to have a quirk in the past. In fact, he was actually a pro hero, going by the name of Overclock in Japan and Hyper Quad Fist in China. His quirk was Overclock, an ability that gave him super speed as well as speeding up his brain processing to an absurd degree. This made Overclock a very tactical fighter, as he always had enough time to analyze and make the best decision in battle. This was all until All For One stole his quirk though and gave it to number 6, the main villain of Vigilantes. But after his quirk was stolen, Oguro didn't just give up. He became a vigilante that worked on his own. He wasn't flashy or well known, but he was certainly effective, and on one of his nightly patrols, he saved Koichi and Popstep, which kickstarted the events of the series, and turned Knuckleduster not just from a vigilante, but into a mentor as well. So what actually makes Knuckleduster so special? Well, for one, he flips the entire archetype of a regular hero on its head, and that's what I love about MHA Vigilantes. It takes a world we already know so well and builds on the issues not represented in the main series. Knuckleduster is the antithesis of regular hero society for a variety of factors. For one, he's quirkless. Obviously in a world of quirks, the quirkless are pretty much screwed, or at least that's what most people think. However, this actually isn't the case, and Knuckleduster is the one that proves it. Traditional heroing only focuses on the big bads wreaking havoc in the streets, or sometimes even smaller scale thugs too. But what the system misses is the villains and crimes that slip in between the cracks. Knuckleduster is the one to pick up the slack for those heroes, whether they like it or not. It's not just who and what he's fighting for though, it's how he fights that makes him so unique. Knuckleduster might just seem like the generic brawler type, but he's actually pretty much the Batman of MHA. Oguro has a massive safe house filled with gadgets, training equipment, city maps, and anything else a vigilante might need. He's also introduced as a bit of a crazy guy, but throughout the series we learn he's actually incredibly intelligent. Aside from that, Knuckleduster's main skill is obviously his hand-to-hand fighting. Oguro is over 6 foot and 220 pounds plus of pure muscle, and at an age of 45, the guy has some serious technique and battle IQ. His fighting style is a brawler boxing type of thing where he goes for huge hits and doesn't mind if he gets beat up in the process. Knuckleduster isn't the type of guy who loves pain, but he is super resistant to it on top of just being very durable. Despite his size, he's also an incredibly quick fighter, as we saw him dodge blows from a monster-sized villain. While we don't get to see a lot of him when he's not with Koichi, we have seen snippets of his training regimen that look super hardcore. He's always toughening up his body to be able to maximize his durability without a quirk. There's so many quirks out there that say that they're one thing, but provide tons of durability or ways to negate damage. But as a quirkless hero, Knuckleduster needs to find his own ways to reduce damage. Like I mentioned before, he has some general toughness, but this also comes into effect when we take a look at his gadgets. Once again, similar to Batman, Oguro utilizes grappling hooks, smoke bombs, taser knuckles, and obviously his signature brass knuckles. He uses these gadgets to move around quickly as well as implementing them into his fighting style. After all, if he can do anything to get a little more damage out, a quirkless hero like him is going to take it. But more than his physical abilities, it's the technique that Knuckleduster uses that makes him resonate so hard with audiences. As I mentioned earlier, Oguro used to have the quirk Overclock, and although it was taken from him, not all of its power is entirely gone. Well, that's not exactly true, it is fully gone, but because Knuckleduster did so much mid-fight analysis with his quirk, he learned to still do this while quirkless, although to a lesser degree. Oguro is still incredibly good at predicting enemy movements and playing multiple steps ahead. He just can't perform at the same level that he used to. Knuckleduster also isn't afraid to make the first move, unlike most heroes. While traditional heroes are a responsive role to villain attacks, Knuckleduster skirts around the law and attacks first. Even as a hero, this was his preferred method of fighting, which got him into a bit of trouble, but now as a vigilante, as long as he doesn't get caught, his methods are much more effective. It's not exactly legal to beat up villains before they commit a crime, but it sure as hell works. Through his actions, we also see how being a classic hero doesn't always mean the best outcome, and sometimes you have to skirt around the lines of what's right and wrong for the good of society. Knuckleduster always also goes a bit too far, leaving his villains battered and bruised, yet nonetheless he's still usually holding back. Koichi mentioned this in his training, where Popstep thought that Oguro was going too far, but Koichi knew that a real punch could have knocked him out cold. Even with all these things that makes him great, like I said, the ethics of his scenario are blurred, because he's the exact opposite of what the Hero Commission wants. He's brutal, does his own thing, and doesn't care about any of their aspects of hero work besides saving people. I'll put a link in the description for another video I did on this, but essentially the hero system as it is incredibly flawed. Not only with the ethics of how hero work is carried out, but with who they even let become a hero. So many people have pro-hero level quirks, but they're never utilized out of not understanding or even caring enough about their quirk. This is something that Knuckleduster really drives into the viewer, as well as Koichi. One of the most impactful aspects about Knuckleduster is how he teaches Koichi his quirk is a lot more powerful than it seems, or rather that Koichi has a lot more potential than he thinks he does. Oguro doesn't know exactly how Koichi's quirk works, nor does he even have a quirk himself anymore, but his principles still apply all the same. He thinks that if you believe you can push yourself to be greater, you can do it. Not everyone can go about this in the same way though, as it takes a lot of trial and error to figure out each person's limitations and adjust accordingly. For Knuckleduster himself, he realized that to make the change he wanted to in the world, he had to go about being a hero on his own. He probably still could have worked as an official hero, but he ditched his license to become a vigilante. With Knuckleduster's fighting style, the Hero Commission already wasn't a big fan, and all they would do is get in his way. He also had to further train up his body to withstand villain attacks and learn to use gadgets to get an edge where he previously had none. As for Koichi, he showed him how to apply the same principle through an entirely different practice. Koichi's edge was speed and versatility, so Knuckleduster recognized this and didn't make him focus on brawling like himself. Instead, he pushed Koichi to further understand his quirk and see exactly what it was capable of. Koichi became a master of outmaneuvering opponents in rescue-style missions, something completely different from Knuckleduster, yet they still had the same ideas behind them. He didn't baby Koichi though. He knew if Koichi wanted to be a true hero, all he needed to do was set him on the right path, and Koichi would figure out the rest. Also, while not as impactful as Koichi's growth, I also wanted to touch on Knuckleduster's relationship with his daughter. If you didn't already know, Knuckleduster tends to keep his personal life pretty hidden, but it's revealed that his daughter is one of the main antagonists at the start of the series, Queen Hachisuka. Hachisuka appears to be a high school girl with the quirk Queen Bee. This quirk releases bees from her eye socket that can explode, inject trigger, or inject poison. The thing is, this girl isn't actually his daughter though. Rather, it's actually the quirk in her using the body as a host. The quirk itself is a large grotesque tumor-like bee, and the thing implanted itself in the girl's eye socket claiming to be a girl named Hachisuka, but her real name was Tamao Oguro. Within Knuckleduster's encounter with his daughter, we see his true drive for saving people and compassion for those he's close with, mixed with the raw brutality that he's obviously known for. When he realizes that if he wants to save his daughter, he needs to drive the bee out of her with force, he doesn't get discouraged or scared. He instead gathers all the supplies that he needs and charges in head on. He also isn't worried about beating on his daughter to save him, as he knows that it's what has to be done, and anything else is going to result in failure. For the sake of the argument, let's pretend that Knuckleduster is actually Deku, and his mom was infected with the same virus. Do you think he'd be willing to engage in a straight up taser knuckle fistfight with his mom to save her? My guess is probably no, and because of it there would be some consequences, but that's what I love so much about Knuckleduster. He knows what has to be done, and if to save his family they have to bruise each other up a bit, he's willing to take that trade any day. This fight is also so well done, and it's pretty rare to see someone fighting to save someone they love while still hitting them. It's almost therapeutic in a way to see Hachisuka get her shit rocked, but knowing Oguro is doing it for his daughter that's trapped in there. Regardless, I think that this fight was really good at showing Knuckleduster's true priorities, and giving him some much needed personal screen time, which was really cool to see. And that about sums up my thoughts on Knuckleduster. Honestly, he's a very interesting and complex character, but compared to some of the others, he just doesn't have as much raw content for me to talk about. Nonetheless, he's still by far my favorite character in MHA Vigilantes, and I love how he portrays the side of hero work that we never really get to see in normal MHA. But let me know if you guys think I missed anything. I did kind of skip over his relationship with Spike, but there didn't seem like much to go over on that front. He just kind of inspired Spike to be a lot like him, and gave him a pretty nice redemption arc. Alright, that's about all I have for you guys, so if you guys enjoyed this video and want to see more like it, make sure to drop a like and subscribe for more vids. I hope you all have a wonderful rest of your day, and I'll see you in the next one. Peace!